This video is sponsored by Brilliant. This is Salisbury Cathedral, home to one of the oldest working clocks in the world, believed to date back to 1386. Known as a turret clock, its iron frame measures 1.29 meters by 1.06 meters, standing 1.24 meters tall. Today, it sits inside the cathedral's north aisle, near the west gate. But it wasn't always here. The clock was originally built for a bell tower that stood 100 yards north of the cathedral. After centuries of service, the tower fell into disrepair and was demolished in 1790, and the clock was moved inside the cathedral to preserve it. In this video, we're traveling back in time to discover how this primitive yet ingenious machine measured the passage of hours in the medieval world long before modern watches or digital clocks. Before we dive into the mechanics of the clock, let's take a moment to see how it was built in medieval times. In the late 13th century, during the Middle Ages, sometimes called the Dark Ages, most machines were simple tools: water wheels turning mills, blacksmith's bellows, or carts pulled by horses. Europe hadn't yet discovered the printing press, and Columbus wouldn't reach America for another 100 years. And yet, here was a machine of iron gears and weights, already ticking away the hours. The clock was made from wrought iron, the first man-made iron of the Iron Age. Fibrous and malleable, it could be hammered, shaped, and forge-welded by skilled blacksmiths into simple components which you can see in the clock's sturdy frame. Bolts and nuts wouldn't be mass-produced for another 400 years, so the frame was joined using rivets, wedges, and mortise joints, much like woodwork. Holes were made by repeatedly hammering iron rods through red-hot metal until the desired opening was formed. Making the gears required even more skill. The rim was built from multiple pieces, forge-welded together, a process where two pieces of iron are heated until glowing and then hammered until they fused into one. Each tooth was individually forged and inserted into the rim, and the spokes were carefully joined and forge-welded to the hub and rim. Precision wasn't perfect. Irregularities caused friction and wear, but it worked. Over 600 years ago, with nothing but basic hand tools and countless hours of labor, craftsmen built a machine like this. It's just remarkable. This clock has two separate gear systems, the going train and the striking train. There's no dial or clock face. Instead, it tells the time by ringing a bell, striking the number of times that matches the hour. Both gear trains are powered by falling weights. Stones are tied to ropes, and the ropes are wound around wooden barrels. The striking train uses the heavier weight, because it also needs enough force to lift and drop the hammer to strike the bell. The large gears directly connected to the barrels are called great wheels. The going train keeps time, while the striking train controls the bell. In the going train, the great wheel turns a smaller gear, which is connected to a saw-toothed gear called the crown wheel. If left unregulated, the falling weight would cause the crown wheel to spin too quickly and run down almost instantly. To control the motion, two pallets on a shaft called the verge block and release the teeth one by one. As each tooth pushes a pallet, the verge rocks back and forth, holding back the next tooth in turn. The speed of this rocking depends on the foliot, a horizontal bar with movable weights. When the weights are spread farther apart, the foliot swings more slowly, holding back the gear longer. When the weights are closer in, it swings faster. By adjusting these weights, the timing of the clock can be regulated. The verge is hung with a string so that the weight of the foliot won't add friction to the movement. This clever setup of the crown wheel, verge, and foliot is called the verge escapement. It's the earliest type of mechanical escapement ever used in clocks, and it stayed in use for centuries until it was replaced by the more accurate pendulum and anchor systems. The gear ratio between the great wheel and the crown wheel pinion is 1:10, and the crown wheel itself has 45 teeth. For the great wheel to make one full turn every hour, 3,600 seconds, the crown wheel must rotate once every 360 seconds. That means each tooth takes 8 seconds to pass. So, one full swing of the foliot should last 8 seconds, or 4 seconds, for each half swing. If the foliot swings too quickly, you move the weights outward to slow it down. If it swings too slowly, you slide the weights inward. With this adjustment, you can fine-tune the clock so each half swing lasts exactly 4 seconds. Because of this setup, the great wheel is limited to one rotation per hour. But how do you wind the rope without interfering with the gear train? The solution is clever. The winding barrel isn't connected directly to the great wheel. Instead, it has a flange with two leaf springs and wedge-shaped levers. By default, the springs push the wedges outward, so they catch on the spokes of the great wheel. When the barrel turns in the normal direction, the wedges engage the spokes, and the barrel drives the great wheel. But when you rotate the barrel the other way to wind the rope, the wedges fold inward and simply skip over the spokes. This way, you can rewind the weight without disturbing the gear train. This is one of the earliest examples of a paw and ratchet mechanism, something you don't often see in machines this old. Now that the going train is ticking steadily, it can be used to control the striking train. On the great wheel, there's a small pin that lifts a lever called the lifting detent once every hour. That lifting motion also turns an arbor carrying two other detents, which work together to control the striking train. If you've ever wondered how ideas evolve from simple mechanisms like this medieval clock into modern technology, our sponsor Brilliant has courses that bridge that gap. From classical mechanics to electricity, programming, and AI. It's a journey from the age of gears to the age of algorithms. Brilliant isn't just about watching videos, it's about learning by doing. Each lesson is filled with interactive problem solving, letting you experiment with concepts the way medieval craftsmen experimented with gears and levers. This hands-on approach helps you build real understanding and strengthens your problem-solving skills at the same time. Brilliant's science courses help you develop your scientific intuition through visual, interactive problem solving that gets you hands-on with key concepts. You'll learn to think like an engineer with lessons on electric and digital circuits, gear systems, physical structures, and more. Their lessons feel like solving little mechanical puzzles yourself. Each step builds your intuition. To learn for free on Brilliant, go to brilliant.org/Quasar-Ed, scan the QR code on screen, or click on the link in the description. Brilliant's also given our viewers 20% off an annual premium subscription, which gives you unlimited daily access to everything on Brilliant. Now let's take a closer look at the striking train. Just like the going train, it has its own great wheel and winding system. On this great wheel are 8 striking pins. As the wheel turns, each pin lifts a lever connected by a string to the hammer. When the lever drops, the hammer falls and strikes the bell. On the same shaft as the great wheel is a small 8-tooth pinion. So each tooth corresponds to one hammer strike. This pinion drives a larger internal gear with 78 teeth called the count wheel. Why 78? Because if you add up the strikes from 1 o'clock through 12 o'clock, you get 78. That means the count wheel makes exactly one full rotation every 12 hours. Without some kind of stop mechanism, the striking train would just spin freely, ringing the bell over and over until the weight is fully unwound. To prevent this, the clock uses the count detent. Around the rim of the count wheel are a series of cutouts. When the detent falls into one of these notches, the striking train is stopped. When the detent rides on the raised surface, the train is free to run. The spacing of these notches determines how many times the hammer will strike before the train is stopped again. Interestingly, there are only 11 notches, even though the bell must strike 12 times. This is because the first 1-hour strike happens at this point. And the other hour strikes occur not just when the count detent is on the circumference. They can also occur even when count detent falls inside the notches. For example, at 2 o'clock the detent is lifted, the train is released, and the bell strikes once on the rim, then once more inside the notch before being stopped. This clever layout squeezes all 78 strikes into the 78 teeth of the count wheel. Once the bell has been struck 12 times, the train must stop completely. This is where the locking detent comes in. It works together with another gear called the hoop wheel, which has a cutout around its rim. The hoop wheel is driven by the great wheel with a 1-to-8 gear ratio, so it makes one rotation for each strike. All 3 detents, the lifting detent, the count detent, and the locking detent, are mounted on the same arbor so they move together. When the count detent rides on the rim of the count wheel, the locking detent stays lifted, allowing the hoop wheel to turn. But when the count detent falls into a notch, the locking detent drops into place, blocking the hoop wheel and stopping the striking train until the next hour. This is how the very first hour strike is controlled. Even though the count wheel still has room to turn, the locking detent holds it back. When the first hour arrives, the lifting detent is raised. That motion also lifts the locking detent and the count detent, releasing the striking train. The hammer strikes the bell once, and since the count detent isn't over the circumference, the locking detent comes down onto the hoop wheel and locks the striking train together with the count detent until the next hour. When the second hour arrives, the same process happens again. All the detents lift together, the striking train is released, and this time the hammer strikes twice before being locked again. This is why the locking detent is so important. It ensures the train stops and starts precisely at each hour. Without it, the count detent might skip past a notch and the clock would strike too many times. Connected to the hoop wheel is a small pinion that drives a weird fan called the fly governor. Because of the high gear ratio, 1:64 from the great wheel, the fly spins extremely fast. The rapid spinning of these giant metal fans creates drag, which evens out the speed of the striking train and makes the bell strikes occur at a steady rhythm. When the striking finishes, the gear train stops suddenly. If the fly were fixed directly to the pinion, this abrupt stop could break it or damage the mechanism. To prevent that, the fly is mounted with a special spring ratchet. This small gear engages the fly through flexible spring arms. As the gear turns, the springs catch the teeth and spin the fly. But when the gear stops, the fly can keep spinning, with the springs slipping past the teeth until it runs out of momentum and stops on its own. There's another ingenious detail in the lifting detent. Unlike the other detents, its tip is pivoted and hangs downward. This design introduces a short delay in lifting. Since the great wheel turns only once per hour, lifting the detents too early would let the striking train run continuously. Instead, the pin first nudges only the pivoted tip. Only when the tip reaches its limit does it lift the detent arbor slightly, just enough to raise the locking detent up to this point. The slope of the locking detent then allows the hoop wheel rim to push it over the rim, starting the strike. Because the lifting happens at the very tip, the detent drops back down quickly, creating a built-in warning mechanism. This small delay prevents false releases or runaway striking. With enough weight drop, this medieval clock could run for a day or two before needing to be rewound. Once the weights are spent, someone simply has to climb up and wind both drums back to full height. What makes this remarkable is that every part of the mechanism was crafted more than 6 centuries ago with nothing but hand tools. The ingenuity, precision, and sheer effort poured into it still inspire awe today. And even now, the clock continues to run inside Salisbury Cathedral, not just a relic, but a living piece of history. The Salisbury clock reminds us that some of the earliest machines were not built for science, industry, or profit, but for faith. Religion demanded precision in marking the hours of prayer, and that need pushed craftsmen to invent new ways of measuring time. From those first iron gears, a chain of innovation began. In the Renaissance, clocks grew more refined, gaining dials, hands, and astronomical displays. By the 17th century, pendulum clocks brought true accuracy, and from there came pocket watches, marine chronometers, and eventually the atomic clocks that guide our world today. It all began with devices like the Salisbury clock, born in an age of faith but opening the door to an age of science. Huge thanks to Mr. Ingeborg Rasch for providing this valuable old leaflet, and to my amazing Patreon supporters for backing the channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.